pleasure for us to have a distinguished alumni of Central High School to interview this afternoon. Daniel Makins graduated 11-ish years ago.
1997.
And went through the San Angelo School District.
I did, start to finish.
And tell us what schools you attended.
I started out in Crockett Elementary School and worked my way up Johnson Street to Glenn Junior High and then across town to Central High School. So enjoyed every one of them for the most part.
Almost all day, every day, that's what I say. Almost all day, every day. And he has returned to San Angelo and is in school at Angelo State.
That's right. I got my degree in 2002 or 3 from Texas State. It was Southwest Texas State at the time. And now I'm back leveling at Angelo State to pursue another degree, or graduate degree.
And I've heard you in concert twice since I moved here, and was crushed when the concerts ended because they are so enjoyable, and everyone, when I looked around audiences, which I enjoy doing if there's any lighting, saw that the rest of the audience had not moved away from their seats because they were enjoying it, people of all walks of life. And the thing that I so much enjoy, many things I enjoy about your music, Daniel, you have taken topics in our world that most people across age groups understand or have a little bit of knowledge about, and you've just written sort of in a ballad format, if that's appropriate to say, describe.
I would say so.
And to very pleasant melodies, and we're listening. It's almost like you're talking to us, but you're singing. Right. And this week, when I heard Daniel at the Art Conservatory, your mother was in the audience and seated where I could watch her enjoy you sing, and it was an equal pleasure to see a family member enjoying their young adult as much as and more of the audience. Now, let's go back to your years of schooling and your personality makeup that has led you to write the kind of music you write. You enjoyed, I would bet, and had friends who enjoyed life.
I did, and I enjoyed. I was never. I've had lots of executives in the music business say that I would never make it because I don't have a drug or alcohol problem, and my parents love me, and I, so far I've enjoyed life. I've had very little to complain about, and so I definitely think that enjoyment of what I do. I would hope a lot of that stems from I'm just a fairly hopeful, happy, well-adjusted human being, which sometimes doesn't sell very well in the commercial music business, but I think is refreshing for audiences. And in particular, that I'm singing about things that a lot of people can identify with, and maybe it's something that they're familiar with, but I'm trying to state it in a less cliche, more genuine way, so that maybe they're approaching it or listening to, descriptions of those experiences as if it was for the first time. And yeah, that connection that you get with the audience from doing something like that is, for me, it's the joy is it's a chain reaction with the audience. So if they're enjoying what I'm doing, I enjoy it that much more and have that much more energy to put into it. So. Well,
you used the word energy. Along with energy, when you were, say, at Central High School, is it possible that you also had a little bit of mischief? I hear.
So you've met some of my former teachers.
And your subject matter and how you put the subject together has a little bit of mischief attached to it in its description. So you have said to me before this interview that you were never in the office but one time, and that really wasn't your fault.
It really wasn't. Of course it was. I'm innocent, of course. So.
But most teachers, surely, I would have enjoyed a young person in my classes, and did enjoy young people that had great senses of humor and added joy.
Well, thank you. And, and most of my teachers, and that energy and that mischief or that twinkle or the bounce to a rhythm I write on the guitar or something is again, I just sort of attribute it to a hopeful, certainly not a carefree at all times, perspective on life, but for the most part, growing up in San Angelo and through the school district, I was influenced and under the supervision of pretty happy, hopeful, easygoing folks. And so yes, I had mischief, and most of my teachers were, as you said, particularly in the GT English program, and probably in particular Mrs. Jones, I remember in English class in high school, who's now at Angelo State, in particular enjoyed that about me and helped to nourish that. Certainly didn't try to quell it in any way.
Or make you change.
Or make me change. Mm-hmm. I certainly knew my limits, and certainly have always been a careful observer and people watcher, and so I was, and that's part of being a good songwriter too, is knowing when you're connecting positively with someone and when you're maybe going somewhere that they're not going to follow.
Or where the line you're
right.
just fixing to cross.
Right, right.
And that's a lifelong skill that many adults at 80 have never learned.
Right, and I think I attribute that also to growing up in San Angelo. I think, going away to college and going away to, say, summer camp or something, it seems like kids from San Angelo were always more socially, because we do know everybody and we see everybody in the grocery store and we're constantly introduced to people, and I think growing up here and being in the school district was a very positive experience for my social ability to know where the line is with people and to interact with people and thereby be a more successful songwriter.
You were in the band.
Yes.
As a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
Both the jazz band and the marching band.
Mm-hmm.
What else? You mentioned English. Were those the things that you feel, the areas of Central High School that you enjoyed the most, perhaps? Certainly
jazz band more than marching band. It's easier to sit behind the drums than it is to carry them around. The uniform is slightly less embarrassing in jazz band than it is in marching band. English and history in particular, because history is just sort of English with I don't want to say English with a purpose, but I read my history the same way I read, the classic novels in GT English, and so I have always enjoyed stories, and I've always been fascinated with people in general.
Well, the subject of many of your songs, you have some historical perspective of our culture, mm-hmm. or at least as I remember some of your songs, and I would think that someone who writes as you do would have to be pretty strong in putting together ideas in order to communicate, because your songs communicate.
Well, thank you. And I think, yes, there's a certain amount of, and of course I'm often categorized as sort of a new folk artist, which is basically sort of a genre-less descriptor of, songwriters who aren't, trying to write songs about girls or beer or strictly to sell on the radio. Folk music back as you may know in pop culture is often associated with the great issues that our country has dealt with at the time. While I don't believe that I have to be, certainly I don't have to be political or anything like that. But yes, the melody and the ballad of and the songwriting that I'm doing is meant to tell a story and to affect people's lives based on that story, or to, whether it be just comforting them or just, like I said, making them think about something new for the first time.
Do you at all get involved in global issues or political issues? Do you consider yourself to have any piece as an activist in your message of your songs?
I do some, though.
Not in the song Peanut Butter.
Not in the song Peanut Butter.
Some others.
There have been, you know, I'm sort of, I feel almost completely politically unaffiliated right now, as I think a lot of people my age sort of do. I think that our society has become so polarized one way or the other that you know, it's hard for me to come down firmly on the side of one thing or the other. But there are and I know that's not what you were trying to pin me down or something, but I mean there are certainly issues that have arisen. I have some songs that I've written about adoption, and some songs that I've written about you know, mental health issues, and certainly race issues. But I don't consider that, certainly it's not a goal. Those songs are much harder for me to write. I try to just write songs that are genuinely true for me and for my life.
But you're also not removed from your world.
No.
Clearly by the issues you just listed, those are deep issues that impact
all of us.
All over, regardless
Sure.
of nationality, ethnicity, financial status. When do you write your songs? When do your ideas come to you?
Gosh, I wish I knew that map a little better. I never know. I never know, and they often come in different ways. You know, people will ask, particularly younger songwriters or older songwriters, less successful songwriters will ask me, you know, well, do you sit down with the guitar and write the melody, or do you dream these words up and then write them down in the middle of the night? And the answer to almost every question they ask is yes, because it depends. It happens differently, and I know a lot of writers have a very disciplined set routine
where their creative juices flow.
Right. Yeah. Every morning between 7 and 9. You know, that's the only time I can write a song after my third cup of coffee. You know, on Tuesday. You know, and there are people that are that regimented about the way they approach it. I've certainly learned to be more disciplined about it, and I've certainly learned that initial spark, an idea for a song. Yes, possibly if I wrote the whole song that morning, would be a good song. As I've gotten older, I've learned that if I sit back for a few weeks with it, or even months or a year with an idea, I'll begin to understand why it is that idea popped into my head a little more clearly, and then I can evolve it into quite a more, certainly a more significant and concise song than it would have been if it was just rhythmically flowing well and rhyming and coming all at once. So I think that's where a lot of young songwriters kind of get tripped up, is they've bought into this lore of a Townes Van Zandt or a Bob Dylan or a John Prine or somebody who, oh, I wrote that song in 3 minutes in the rain, you know, walking home one day. And certainly there are songs that are like that, but you learn a lot more about yourself, which, and I selfishly will admit that's I enjoy connecting with other people, but I enjoy learning about myself and who I am and where I'm going as a human being. By listening to what I've written. And a lot of times, like even full records that I've spent, you know, 2 years pre-producing and coming up with the songs and perfecting the order that the songs should be presented in and what instruments will go on them. Oftentimes it's 1.5 years, 2 years later before I realize what the song was really about, even though it's on a record and out there for mass consumption. So I have just as much to learn from what I'm doing as an audience does, and that's what makes it fun. And I can't remember what your original question was. I'm really bad about that.
How your ideas come to you. Do you have a place? But you've answered that. Some people, when I have interviewed authors, for example, and one of my favorite authors, and I had an opportunity to interview him some years ago, is Tony Hillerman. And he talks about how he gets an idea and he'll jot it down and it'll go in a folder, and he'll try to cultivate that and enlarge that.
Right.
But sometimes that folder goes in his the literal filing cabinet, and he won't come back to it for a while.
Years. And I think, like I've spoken with Elmer Kelton, kind of about the way he writes, and whether it's songs, or whether you're a poet, which is basically just what I do without the music, and better, because they have to be more concise for the most part than I've got. I can lean on the music and the melody a little bit to move along something that, as a poem, might not be quite as intriguing. But Elmer will say that, or Mr. Kelton, I should say, will say that there are writers that have a very strict sense of an outline, and they don't begin narrative until they have a very clear vision of where it's going. And I know he's told me that he doesn't approach it that way. He doesn't want to be that structured, and he enjoys, kind of learning as he goes along where the characters are going. I mean, certainly he has a map and maybe an overall kind of idea about where it ends up, but I think knowing exactly how you're going to get there is something that, in my opinion, probably makes for a more formula song in my career, in my experience. It's been a less intriguing song, and by limiting myself to that sort of rigidity, I think I miss sort of the overall point of what's going on.
Well, Daniel, some highly gifted people that I've known have trouble getting any organization, and so they struggle getting an end result.
Right.
They have lots of things, and Tony Hillerman said there have been periods of his life, even though he's certainly very productive, as Mr. Kelton is. But they have so many feelers going out here of ideas that have come to them, but they can't stay with one long enough. And I'm not talking about Mr. Kelton and Mr. Hillerman.
Right.
That hear all these wonderful, and so, but you have, for a young person who's 30, have really written quite a bit.
Oh, I have. Yes, I have. I've cataloged well over 1,000 songs, and a lot of them, when I was living in Nashville, are songs that I'm not particularly proud of and don't, particularly play, mostly because they had nothing to do with me, and they were just songs that I was writing to try and sell a song. That's most of what you hear on the radio. There are, of course, exceptions, great ones, and I'm not trying to avoid the question, but it is, I honestly do sort of approach it with sort of a Zen-like, for me, it's more about the means than it is the ends. That's what our lives are about. They're not about, yes, we're all going to die. It's okay, now that you've got that figured out, what are you going to do in the meantime? And that's sort of how songs are to me. They're all learning processes, and that's why I try to inject hope in my melody construction and because ultimately, we all want to live a good life, and we all want to, enjoy the means as best we can on our way to the ends.
So you get your word and your concepts, and then you do your melody, or do you start humming?
It depends. It's literally about half and half, I would say, if I had to guess. And sometimes I go through phases or periods, Van Gogh and goes through the blue period. Well, I go through the melody first period, and I go through I wrote all these songs in the shower period, and for some reason this month, man, I'm getting good ideas in the shower. I should shower in the morning, not before I go to bed, And, it just varies, because I'm constantly evolving as a person, moving through life. I'm constantly exponentially building on these experiences that I've had, and becoming a more thorough, and complete person, I hope. So my process is ever changing.
Well, you're still so young in the scope of life. Are you?
Thank you.
Well, you are. You're younger than my children, so you're young. Have you been in a phase where, because you had to earn a living, you had to meet a deadline to produce?
I've never, even when I was in Nashville, I wasn't really the music industry has changed so much, and the construct and the concentration of power and who makes decisions and everything has changed so much and become so narrow and so focused that there are very few writers who actually have a full-time contract anymore to write. Most of the publishing houses in Nashville are closed now, and most of them are owned by two companies, one of which being Sony. And so, not being a paid writer, I haven't had deadlines. I've certainly had, and most of my success has been regional, with people I've met through travels or opening up for them at their shows, or them opening up for me at my shows. So in that sense, I've been a less typical writer. I own my own publishing company to handle the licensing and I guess pushing of my songs onto other people. That's all my responsibility. So I haven't been a big deadline writer. I have had some success with, we need a song that sounds sort of like this, and this is what I'm going for, and I want it to be about a girl, or it's intended for a woman to sing. And so those are about the strictest confines that I've had to work under, where I'm just trying to produce something that speaks to the issue or the feel that an artist is looking for to put on their record, which is hard for me. I'm a very selfish writer. I mean, I've obviously admitted that it's mostly about me and my, you write what you know is the oldest, cliche, but it's true. And I think it's true for the best writers. I think a lot of these songs that are coming out commercially these days are not people writing about what they know. They're writing about what sells at Walmart, and they're writing about what Sony, as a corporation, has decided they know how to market, or they have a certain type of song. We know that if we put $1.2 million in the promotion of this song at Target and Walmart and on Clear Channel Radio, it'll work and it'll sell. And the American public has gone along with it mostly because they don't know, they're not exposed to anything else, because it's become so concentrated that becomes good music, and it's been sort of defined, predestined for them. And so I haven't had to work under that, because my goal has never been
to please enough.
Right. And all commercially viable music is by definition appealing to a median of society, and I don't like that. I don't like great art that has gone down in history, be it painting or music or anything, or pottery or whatever it is, or has come from an artist being honest with their original vision and following through with that. It hasn't been, it's been a selfish thing. Most of the successful art has been a thing that later on, caught on, and I enjoy much more, I think, though I've never experienced having millions of dollars and having huge artists record my songs. That would be fantastic, only because it would allow me to do this more full time. I think there's a lot more to be said for connecting with people in the small clubs that I do, where there's maybe 50 or 100 people in the audience. I think that's a far more productive experience than a stadium with 40,000 people. But that could just be that's my preference. But I feel more progress is made as a music consumer, and I'm a fan of a lot of just tons of different genres of music. The concerts I've enjoyed the most have been in a very small scale setting, where I felt like I was, sure there were other people in the room, but it was really, that song was really just for me. Me and the artist really connected there. That there's a lot to be said for that experience, and I think it's not available in commercially successful music anymore.
How has you having your own family impacted or changed at all what you do?
Well, I'm 10 weeks in. My son was born 10 weeks ago, so
Sleeping?
I'm still learning about how it's going to affect me. Yes, I haven't written as much. My wits have not been about me because I am not sleeping as much as I'm accustomed to. But my history traveling, and I've learned to operate on what sleep I can get, and it's a very powerful thing. All those cliches that everybody talks about when your baby's born, are all true. It's certainly a mix of all those things, and I don't need to repeat the cliche. Everybody knows that. Yes, it's extremely powerful, and it's extremely. If anything, it just hardens my resolve that if I'm going to sit down and write a song, certainly if I'm going to expect other people to enjoy it or get something out of it, I need to be honest with what I'm doing. Life is a very precious thing. You need to be honest with it, and you need to be concise and careful and really think about what it is you're putting out, for consumption for other people. I don't know what that really means, but
how many years ago did you write Peanut Butter?
I wrote Peanut Butter. Now, Peanut Butter was definitely one of those songs that was written in 30 minutes at the kitchen table, sort of for fun. And I think, and I'm not trying to be overly sincere or serious about, it's important to also interject, those songs like Peanut Butter, which is a humorous song, are important on a record. I still make records from a concept of, I'm not interested in the one song. Obviously, I have my favorites or the ones that speak to me the most at the moment, but at any given moment, and it changes, of course, daily. But, those songs are important too. And I wrote Peanut Butter, I guess, 2 years ago, primarily because, and it was sort of an issue song, I played the Get Fit Texas campaign for Governor Perry in the backyard of the governor's mansion, the kickoff party for it, which Get Fit Texas is just sort of an exercise campaign that Governor Perry has initiated to help try and specifically targeted at maybe childhood obesity. Yes. or just getting kids to be active. And at the time, when I was there, I met the sort of the chairperson for the Texas food banks, and they were stressing the value of peanut butter as a cheap commodity that is high in protein, and you get a lot of caloric intake out of it, and it stores forever. So they were talking about doing an ad campaign for peanut butter. And so I set out to write this song, Peanut Butter, that maybe they could use, in the commercials or in clips. And it was just a funny thing. I haven't spoken with him since, and that's been several years ago, so I don't know whatever became of the campaign. But so it was sort of a political, it certainly doesn't come off as a political song, but it was, there's a lot of value in peanut butter. And so.
But how can you explain, not that this is a deep question, but in the two different audiences in which I've been, Rotary and at the Presbyterian Church for the Art Conservatory,
right.
It's so loved. People enjoy and are going to request. You tried to leave that out this week, and it was toward the very end when you realized you had a few more minutes. And if someone else hadn't requested it, I was going to request it. So why?
It's I think because it's a positive song. I think because it makes you feel good. And like I said before, I'm not trying to say that every song written has to be a moving or transformative experience. You know, certainly there's a lot of value in just positive, good energy, particularly when the timing's just right and it's well written and the words go just here and there and, you know, all that. But people like that song because it makes them smile.
And every person in both audiences were smiling. Every person smiled during that song.
Mm-hmm.
Just when you announce the title,
Mm-hmm.
they start smiling.
Yes.
So it has added so much joy, and yet it isn't going to solve any world problems.
But it might. If someone's in a really bad mood on their way home from work or sitting in traffic, it's really hard to have road rage while you're listening to Peanut Butter. It just is. And I get emails all the time of people that have, you know, particularly if a guy from Atlanta, Georgia, emailed me, and apparently Atlanta traffic is just as bad as Houston or L.A. And he said I was just about at wit's end, and he has a mixed CD with Peanut Butter on it, and he said, but you know, it's hard to be mad when you're listening to that song, and I hope that's true. And who knows what the consequences of that are? You know, the consequences, while important to consider, you know, in your initial intent, are obviously important. But, and I think it's Sting, the pop artist, you know, from the Police, Sting, who said, you know, the best you can do is put it out there. They're sort of like messages in a bottle. You know, when people get them, and when people hear Peanut Butter and smile in traffic hundreds of miles away in Atlanta, it has a lot more to do with the message, you know, the song or whatever, than it has to do with me, which is nice because it takes a lot of the burden kind of off of me. But it's absolutely true. So you never know, and that's why you need to be careful about what you put out. I'm a big believer in good art versus bad art, and all art is subjective. But I think good art seeks the positive. It seeks the creative, not the destructive. One of my favorite authors is Madeleine L'Engle, who I know there's probably a lot of kids who've read A Wrinkle in Time, and a lot of parents who've had to read A Wrinkle in Time. And it's certainly a great book, but she certainly has fabulous books for adults as well. And I think some of the best children's authors make the best adult authors. I think kids are a lot harder audience to please. I'm trying to write a children's record right now, and it's much more difficult because kids are much more real. They're much more cut and dry. Their viewpoint is not skewed by the justifications of a highly developed mind. You know, they're honest with what they know and what they believe in. So,
Daniel, what do you want to be a decade from now?
Well, right now I am a pre-med student, so I don't know exactly. I'm going to follow that as far as I can and see if I can get accepted somewhere, and if not, I'll probably be a biology major. I will always be a songwriter. I hope because of that, I will always be in process of becoming a better person and a more confident and complete person. When teachers or kids ask me about songwriting, particularly I get a lot of requests, especially since we've moved back to San Angelo, of teachers wanting me to come speak to their students. Either kindergarten classes or, you know, Terry Dalrymple at Angelo State, his seniors in creative writing, or his master's students. And the value of writing and creativity and art of any kind is that which you learn from the process of doing it or consuming it. It's less about the art form than it is about how it affects you. So hopefully I will be affected positively and continue to learn more about myself and thereby be, you know, more what I was created to be, you know, in the long run. That's the goal.
Well, we would love to hear you sing something for us. And
Okay.
we've talked so much about peanut butter. I don't know how many people in our audience have heard that, but you thought that there was another song that our audience would relate to because it has a local root.
Right. Well, originally when you asked me to come, I was thinking about obviously SAISD and my experience growing up. And since I did just mention Terry Dalrymple over at Angelo State University, he wrote a book that we read in, I think it was 3rd or 4th grade. And I thought it illustrated really well sort of the ability to learn from a song and to grow from a song. And his book was called Fishin' for Trouble. And it was a very simple read, but a quick and delightful read as a 3rd grader. And I hadn't thought about the book in a long time, and so me and Terry were talking about it, and I thought, well, it'd be kind of cool. I remember that I learned so much from that book as a kid, even though I didn't really know what it was I was learning. It was more I was absorbing sort of a feel, an overall, it sounds corny to say, an overall energy or something from the book, or it sounds new wave or something, but it definitely affected me in a positive way. And so when I set out to start writing this album for children, when my wife got pregnant, I went back and read that book to try and sort of research that feeling that I wanted to go for in the record. And so I decided the best way to learn about that was to sort of try and adapt the song or adapt the book into a song. And I've taken a little bit of creative license here, but I've tried to keep it so that you still need to read the book. And it's probably sort of like a good movie. The book is probably still better than this song. But it was 5th grade of my fishing years. True as God on Cypress Creek with my fishing piers. We caught a big one, about 2 pounds. The bullies wouldn't believe us on the playground. We made a bet to settle the score. Just me and my friends against the bullies, a fishing war. In the hot sun every day, bobbers and worms fishing summer away. Came the news from the enemy camp. A giant catfish, they held a winning hand. So we planned to get a boat. Our victory fish lie in deep water, it was our only hope. When you're 12 years old, your whole world is just your fishing hole. Your eyes start to open, you see pretty girls. People aren't what they seem, it's a whole new can of worms. In a great big world on the double, fishing for trouble. We got a boat in a sorry old state. It was free, we worked hard, but that boat did sink. I fell in quite over my head in a a tangle of emotion, hormone and tackle. There was a voice that said, let go and give me your arm. Honest to God, it was a bully, kept me safe from harm. It turns out he's just a kid like me, slightly less fortunate with some trouble in the family. But he could fish just as well as you please. So now we cast together, no longer enemies. You can't judge a book by its cover, despite the beauty or the color of the picture. When you're 12 years old, your whole world is just your fishing hole. Your eyes start to open, you see pretty girls. People aren't what they seem, it's a whole new can of worms. In a great big world on a double, fishing for trouble, fishing for trouble, you're fishing for trouble.
Wow.
So that certainly has, elements of political, race, and kids getting along and learning that their differences and their, approaches to life don't necessarily make them incompatible or less valuable, certainly. But there are a lot of adults who need to hear that song too. So I really don't subscribe to what's good for children, isn't necessarily necessary or suitable for adults, and vice versa. So,
Would give me a percentage, and I'm an ish person.
Okay.
Are more
Good. We all are.
are more of your songs deep as that song? That is powerfully deep.
Well, thank you.
Or are they more leaning toward peanut butter songs?
I'm not trying to be sort of Zen-like or something again, but I think, the deeper you go, the more simplistic, things really become. So I don't, when I'm developing an order for songs on an album or a set list for the night, I don't look around the room and decide what sort of depth is necessary, because I think people need variations of it. A song that has deep meaning for me doesn't necessarily dictate that it's going to have even an ish factor of that depth to you or someone else, and that's nobody's fault. It's certainly not mine. I just wrote the song. It's one of the things I loved about the GT English program and Mrs. Jones's class in Central High School was while we did analysis of what we thought the writer's intent was, and yes, certainly that was foreshadowing, what was, Steinbeck really trying to say? Well, we think-ish this, but it's really up to you, because true art is going to affect all of us in different ways, based on our life experience. That's why it's so incredibly moving for me when someone connects with something I've done or smiles at peanut butter. All that says is they're connecting with me or with the song due to their life experience. So who am I to say, I don't know. Maybe so. Some songs probably do have more depth for some people than others. But I certainly think Peanut Butter has depth if you want to look into it. I haven't found it yet, but I'm sure it's there.
Well, but you would have to then go beyond what you were complimenting Ms. Jones for not going beyond, and that is over-analysis.
Over-analysis, or not so much over-analysis as it is dictating to others, this is what he meant. I've had English professors in college in the past that I thought took a far less open-minded approach to teaching the material. I think there's a big difference between teaching material and enabling people to experience the material as it pertains to literature. Obviously 2 + 2 is 4, and and Winston Churchill, did write this letter in 1941, and there are things that are hard and fast in education that we all need to know. But when you're consuming literature or you're consuming art of any kind, the facilitation should be more around helping people less experienced than yourself to experience in their own way. So.
Well, for the young man who in Peanut Butter comes across with a sparkle of mischief, you have blessed us and enriched us by giving us this insight, and I personally will not listen to you ever again in quite the same way.
Well, I may have just shot the whole thing in the foot just now then, but
well, Daniel,
I think it works out well that especially when I'm playing live, it works out well for us not to know each other sometimes, because it keeps me out of the way of people's experiencing the music. So I hope I haven't ruined that for anybody. But
no, you have not at all ruined it, and if nothing else, have enriched it to where we all want to experience more.
Well, thank you very much.
Of what you are giving to the world.
Well, thank you very much.
And I hope that you are not fishing for trouble, but literally are going to continue giving back to your world the level of joy you give.
That's the goal. So.
Well, you're well on the way at 30 years old.
Well, I appreciate it very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you, Daniel.
I'll take white, sometimes on crackers late at night. I get my sticky fingers everywhere. It tastes so good, I don't care. It's just peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, peanut butter, honey. Peanut butter all the time. Elvis liked it with bananas, 'cause that tastes good. It'd stick to Priscilla, but she understood. Even a king needs simple things. He'd say, thank you very much for the joy it brings. It's just peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, peanut butter, honey. Peanut butter all the time. Keep your caviar and your Swiss fondue. Brie smells funny and so do you. High class parties really give me fits, so I'll be in the kitchen putting it on a Ritz, singing peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, peanut butter, honey. Peanut butter all the time. And we've all liked it since our first school snack. Even after a struggle, a dog will come back for more and more with a tired tongue and say, I'm your best friend, you're number one. I'm your best friend, now give me some of that peanut butter. Jelly, yeah, peanut butter, honey. Peanut butter all the time. die, don't take me too far. Just burn me up and put me in a jar. Then spread me out on a peanut field, and I come back as a perfect meal, singing peanut, peanut butter and jelly. Yeah, peanut, peanut butter, honey. Peanut, peanut butter all the time.